Right, welcome everybody. Apologies for that slight technical hitch, but we're there. Today I'm delighted to introduce Tricia Allerston, who's going to talk to us and give us the 37th talk in our series of talks on various subjects of sporting art. It's difficult to believe that we started this project in the dark days of COVID in 2020, when we had to cancel our programme of visits. Tricia is going to talk about Landseer's Monarch of the Glen. As she has said, this is an iconic painting that over the years has been used to represent Scotland and Scottishness, but ironically was painted by an Englishman. Tricia is head of European and Scottish art and chief curator at the National Galleries of Scotland. From 2016 to 2023, she co-directed the major capital project to create a new suite of galleries at the National Gallery in Edinburgh. She led on design, displays and interpretation of the new galleries, which focus on Scottish art and opened in 2023, September. The Monarch of Glen obviously dominates one of the galleries. She also curated two permanent displays which range in date from 1780 to 1945 and co-authored two books, Scottish Art in 100 Works and a Guide to the National Galleries of Scotland. She was previously head of education at the National Galleries of Scotland. She's a fellow of the Royal Historical Society and an honorary fellow of the School of History, Classics and Archaeology at the University of Edinburgh. She's currently, with all the other things she has to do, writing a book on the National Gallery of Scotland in the Second World War. Before we get started, I would like to thank Jamie Rowntree of Rowntree Tryon Gallery for sponsoring this series. As I've said many times, Jamie's sponsorship means that we can continue to put on these talks for free. It also means that non-members and, more importantly, future members can join us. And again, we are recording this talk for future reference. I would also like to remind you that you can access the previous talks through the BSAT website. Tricia is happy to answer questions at the end of the talk. All you have to do is type in the question under the Q&A tab to the bottom of your right of your screen. You type the questions and I'll put them to Tricia at the end of the talk. That's enough from me. Thank you, Tricia, for agreeing to give this talk and welcome.
Thanks very much, and I hope you can hear me. The sound's coming through.
It is for me, yes. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And it was my technical hitch at the beginning, for which I apologise most profoundly. So I'm delighted today to have the chance to speak to members of the British Sporting Art Trust about Sir Edwin Landseer's Monarch of the Glen, which was painted in about 1851. So this painting is still, we see it still as a relatively recent acquisition. It was bought at very short notice, and I'll say a bit more about that later on, between late 2016 and early 2017. And it is now the centrepiece of one of the inaugural displays within our new Scottish galleries, as Tim said, at the National Galleries of Scotland National, which is the Scottish formerly known as the National Gallery of Scotland. We've recently been rebranded, and now we are the National Galleries of Scotland National. So I'll refer to National in my talk, but it means the National Gallery of Scotland. So this image that we're starting with was part of a photo shoot to announce the opening date. And we had a lot of debate about which picture, which artwork we should start with. And I must admit, I was slightly nervous launching a suite of Scottish galleries with a painting representing Scotland, but by an Englishman, because I expected there to be a bit of reaction to that. And there wasn't. The image was by somebody called Jane Barlow, that you can see at the bottom, and the image went viral at the time. So it is an image that's very well known. So that is a sort of photo shoot, as it were. That is a romantic in a way. That's not necessarily 100% real. They're not necessarily hanging the picture on the wall. But this is the real install. And as Tim said, I was the lead curator on the new galleries, which opened on the 30th of September and 2023. And I was also responsible for the display in which the Monarch of the Glen is located, which we've called Romance and Reality Scotland 1800 to 1890. And that's me on the left. So my talk will introduce a bit more. I'm sure you're very familiar with the Monarch of the Glen, but I'll introduce it a bit more and the artist Edwin Landseer, and talk about the acquisition, but also reflect on how we present the painting at the National, because it is relatively new to us and we've presented it in two different ways since we've received it, focusing on its role in this new display, which also contains a few other sporting pictures of note beside Landseer's great work of 1851. So there we go. So Landseer's fabulous sporting picture, The Monarch of the Glen, is one of the most famous. We're always wary about saying this is the greatest work, this is that. But I think it isn't too exaggerative to say that Landseer's famous, fabulous sporting painting, The Monarch of the Glen, is one of the most famous British pictures of the 19th century. Here we see a statuesque stag surveying the Scottish landscape from a brackeny-ish, is it bracken? Brackeny-ish knoll against a magnificent mountainous backdrop. Mist swells up from the glen and merges with the clouds enveloping the mountain peaks. The hills are certainly alive here, but not with the sound of music. Every detail of the stag is rendered precisely, from the sleek, sheeny texture of its fur to the moist nature of its nostrils, which is one of the most amazing parts of the painting if you get to see it up close. Now, this is a monarch in pose and attitude, but not, as I'm sure you'll be the first to correct me, in stag terms, having only 12 instead of 16 tines on its antlers. So it's essentially a royal stag, not a monarch. But this is, for many, an iconic image which encapsulates the grandeur and majesty of Scotland's highlands and wildlife. And it's also an outstanding example of animal painting by the most famous Victorian artist who produced such work, at least within Britain. So let's meet Landseer. So Edwin Landseer counts amongst the most highly regarded painters of the 19th century. A child prodigy, he joined the schools at the Royal Academy at an extremely young age. He became renowned for the technical skill and empathy with which he depicted animals. And I'd love to know more about this, but I understand that he is one of the first great British artists to really study animal anatomy to the point of attending dissections of animals, which wasn't something that had always been done before him. Landseer first visited Scotland in 1824 and was greatly inspired by the experience. He returned annually to sketch and socialise with his high-status patrons in late summer and the autumn for 40 years. That's one of the reasons we had a lot of discussion about, is this a Scottish painting or not? But I think if someone visits every year, more or less, for 40 years, they know a place pretty well, I would say. And he developed a particular affinity with the writer Sir Walter Scott, that we'll hear a bit more later on, and his writings. And I think it's not a coincidence that the time of year when Landseer came up to Scotland corresponds with the hunting season for most game. Like other artists later on, and we'll get another example, he himself was very much, his patrons, his clients were in Scotland at that time, and he was not averse necessarily to getting involved himself. The paintings that he worked up from these sketches, from these trips, and he took lots of sketches, went back to his studio in London and worked them up into paintings. These were very often engraved as reproductions, and they played a key role in creating the romantic image of the Scottish Highlands, which in many respects continues today. This is something that we're, I think, seeing a lot more, seeing the reactions to the gallery since it's been up now for a couple of years, but a lot of people really respond well to these big Victorian paintings depicting Scotland, which were popular in their time, and they're still very popular. And this is an important early example, which is in the current display. It's not ours. We're very lucky to have it on loan from a private collection. And it's called Scene in the Highlands, with portraits of the Duchess of Bedford, Duke of Gordon, and Lord Alexander Russell, painted in about 1825 to 8. And it's rumoured that Landseer had a relationship with the Duchess of Bedford during this period. There's been much said about that. Landseer loved the splendour of the Scottish landscape. He was extremely good at painting pure landscape, although it's not an aspect of his art that we're always familiar with. But he loved the splendour of the Scottish landscape, the sense of space and solitude that could be experienced there, and the thrilling spectacle of animals in the wild, especially deer. He quickly gained aristocratic patronage and favour, and also worked extensively for Queen Victoria. And he was knighted in 1850 just before he painted the Monarch of the Glen. So showing you another of our photo op images. Jane Barlow, who took this photograph for us, is a Press Association photographer, and she was the person who took the last photos of the late Queen, and for which she achieved an award at the time. So she's been in the press herself, which is quite unusual for someone who's a photographer and on the other side of the camera. The Monarch of the Glen was initially conceived as the first of a series of 3 works, 3 paintings, to be displayed in the refreshment rooms of the House of Lords. And presumably, with the third of the paintings, the second or the third of the paintings, ending up perhaps something like this or this. But this is the first and only one of the 3 that was painted. There was a disagreement about payment. Landseer had been promised a very large sum of money for painting the 3 paintings, and then there was a discussion about whether he should be paid that amount. And he decided instead, knowing his own worth, I think, he withdrew it from that commission and sold it instead to a private collector soon after its completion. From the moment it was first exhibited in 1851 at the Royal Academy in London, the painting proved hugely popular. It was widely reproduced in the 19th century through engravings, and in 1916, and remember that 1916 is a key year, it was purchased by Sir Thomas Dewar, who was known as Whiskey Tom. And from that point on, it was regularly employed as a marketing image by John Dewar and Sons Distillery, Glen and many others. Through its widespread use in commercial advertising and in popular culture, the painting has become instantly recognisable. And it's been one of the slightly annoying aspects of acquiring this work that many people thought we've had it for years anyway, but we didn't. It was on show for a long time at the National Museums of Scotland, and was certainly part of a private collection, not a public one. So how and when did we acquire this iconic painting at the National Galleries? Well, frankly, it was a bit of a surprise when the Monarch of the Glen came on the art market in 2016, so 100 years after it was originally sold to the Dewar family. The painting had been in London in 2016 as a part of a month-long loan exhibition of British masterpieces that had passed through Christie's sales rooms. Now, this was in celebration of Christie's 250th anniversary in that year. The auction house had sold the painting exactly 100 years previously to Whiskey Tom. Impressively, and this is impressive, once they had it on site in 2016, the clever folk at Christie's managed to transform their exhibition loan into an auction commission. They managed to get it to be commissioned to an auction. The painting was toured internationally after this decision had been made in advance of its prospective sale, arousing a considerable amount of interest, especially in the United States. And I'm showing you here the back of the painting when it came in, which shows you a sticker from Hong Kong from that recent trip. It's always interesting seeing the back of paintings. You don't always get to see this now because to create a safe environment for paintings that tour or travel, they tend to have a backboard that covers the complete back. But you can see from the holes here that this is a painting that has been displayed a lot over the course of its life. It's got other stickers showing a few of the exhibitions it was lent to in the 1970s and 80s, but it has a very long exhibiting history. So the end of 2016, or towards the end of 2016, the painting had been commissioned to sale, and this is where we came in. So the Monarch of the Glen was understood by many in Scotland to be an inalienable part of our heritage and culture. And in November 2016, National Galleries of Scotland entered into a partnership arrangement with the painting's owner, by then the global drinks company Diageo, with the aim of keeping the Monarch of the Glen in Scotland. Under this arrangement, Diageo agreed to gift, and it's an incredibly generous gift, they agreed to gift half the estimated market value of the painting to allow the National Galleries, us, a sporting chance to acquire the work. We then embarked on a rapid fundraising campaign led by Sir John Layton and Christopher Baker to secure £4 million to buy the canvas, thus allowing the painting to pass from private to public ownership for the first time in its history. Following a 4-month fundraising campaign, the painting was acquired in March 2017 by the National Galleries of Scotland, with generous support from the National Lottery, who donated 2.75 million, and the gallery in which the Monarch of the Glen now sits is the Lottery Gallery. Art Fund gave £350,000. These are huge sums of money for an artwork. The Scottish Government donated £175,000, again, all at very short notice. Several trusts and foundations and the public, as well as the previous owner, Diageo Scotland Limited, helped us to buy this work. We were completely astounded by the degree, depth and range of public support when the fundraising campaign was launched. And funding, donations came in from all around the world, including Anchorage in Alaska, Queensland, Australia, Los Angeles and Hong Kong. It just shows there are Scots all over the world, I think, but many people felt this was a painting that needed to stay here. So here are some pictures of when the painting arrived in 2017 and was initially displayed. You can see it here. This is the what we call the mound level, the sort of Princes Street entrance level of the gallery. It's on several levels. And this is when the painting arrived at the National in early 2017. And you can see the art handlers unpacking it. It's a big picture, very big picture. And it's since been glazed and has this backboard to enable it, because we did travel it quite soon. So it's an incredibly heavy picture now. It's one of our heaviest works of art. On arrival, it was carefully checked by one of our conservators, Lorraine Moore, to make sure that everything was as it should be. And this is how we initially hung it at the National Gallery of Scotland in early 2017, on the same wall as a rather fabulous large-scale painting by Frederick Church, the American landscape painter of Niagara Falls. It's his anniversary this year, so keep an eye out. If you're going to the States, there are a lot of exhibitions of Frederick Church, fascinating artist, happening this year. And the central painting is by David Roberts, another Scottish artist who travelled in Spain and in the Middle East. But this is a painting of Rome, which dates from about the same time as the Monarch of the Glen. And you get a sense there. Monarch of the Glen is a big picture. These are larger ones. But this is the company which it kept when we first acquired the painting. After a summer in Edinburgh, the Monarch of the Glen toured to 4 venues around Scotland using the marketing hashtag Love It Dearly, which we all cringed at, but actually it turned out that research undertaken in the different venues we sent it, that a lot of people responded very positively and do literally love this painting dearly. So this gives you a sense of the tour programme within Scotland. The tour began at Inverness Museum and Art Gallery in October 2017, and then it travelled to Perth, to Paisley and to Kirkcudbright over on the west. And the painting was on view for around 7 weeks at each venue. And each venue did something very different with it. And I'm just showing you 2 examples here. On the left, when it was shown at Kirkcudbright, in the new galleries in Kirkcudbright, it was shown on the ground level as you went in, which was, in a sense, the most straightforward place for it to be displayed. And it was displayed as it is. And on the right, at Inverness Museum and Art Gallery, they combined the display of the picture with an exhibition by Ross Sinclair, who's a Scottish contemporary artist who has for a very long time engaged with the work of Landseer. So it was in very different company in Inverness to the company it kept in Kirkcudbright, and the same was the case at Paisley and at Perth. Inspired by when it went to Kirkcudbright, Kirkcudbright had just recently opened a beautifully refurbished set of galleries, and the town rather went to town. And I'm just showing here this rather lovely photograph from a window display in Kirkcudbright, celebrating the arrival of the stag, and then cake shops, and everybody seemed to join in. Inspired by a popular Scottish comedy TV show called Chewing the Fat, we also took the painting out for day trips in our art van, surprising a few schools and colleges near each of the touring venues. And this was something we'd never done before, but we tried it. The security was very strict, and only the head teachers of each school or college knew about it. But essentially, we rocked up in the art van with the painting, all carefully presented. And then classes in the school came out and saw it in the van in the car park during the day. Never done it before, but it worked really well. And there's certainly been a request for us to do this again, because it's something that's relatively easy, but has a massive impact, because many places and many schools, many young people don't get the opportunity to go to art galleries. So here we have an example from Alcaston Primary School near Paisley, and also Gatehouse Fleet Primary School, showing the number of people involved and the police. And also Edinburgh College Granton campus, where the students look perhaps a little bit less thrilled than the primary school pupil at Alcaston Primary School. Now, all this touring activity, which was followed by a trip to the National Gallery in London from November 2018 to February 2019, coincided with display planning for our project to develop a new suite of galleries at the National Gallery of Scotland in the centre of Edinburgh. And I'm showing you here a photograph the year we opened, in which you can see the historic gallery built in the mid-19th century, the temple on the top, as it were. To the right is a link that was made between, there were two temple galleries, the Royal Scottish Academy building and the National Gallery in the centre of Edinburgh. And they were joined around 2000 to 2004 with a new underground link, which you can see there on the left. And then the new area that was carved out for the new Scottish galleries is the lighter coloured stone underneath the 19th century building, underneath the pediment. And that's the run of the new galleries there, where you can see that there are sort of vertical windows going into each space as well. And this is the long run with the windows shining in that you can see. This is the new suite of galleries underneath the gallery space. So this brings me to the last part of my talk, or the next part of my talk, on the Monarch of the Glen within the display Romance and Reality Scotland 1800 to 1890, which, as I said, was one of the inaugural displays and is still on show within these new Scottish galleries at the National Gallery of Scotland. First, before we could do the display, we had to build the gallery in question, and significant structural changes were undertaken between 2019 and 2022 to create more gallery space and to improve access to it. So if I go backwards, you can see towards the left of the picture, there's a bank at the back. And this is, we sort of carved into that area there to create a new gallery space. Space is always valuable in the centre of the city. And also we were very much on public view, being in the centre of the city. And there's a hill, if you run on the bus going up the hill behind, up the mound, bus passengers could see exactly what was happening and what we were doing. So we carved out new space, which you can see here with the piles. And there are temporary piles where there was a new access space going into the gallery then there. This was quite a big operation. It's something that we was an important part of our planning and construction and engineering. We're underneath the A-listed building, which is one of the top buildings in Edinburgh, and it was all very carefully planned, but a bit nerve-wracking when we were doing it. This is the space that you can see there. This is the space once a roof had been put on it, then we had to fit it out to make it waterproof, which was done with lots of stuff called eggcrete, I believe. Waterproof being at the bottom of a hill, water comes down the hill. We had to be very, very careful that this new space we were creating would be suitable for taking works of the quality that are in it. Eventually creating this, which is the large space. This is one of about 12 galleries in this lower area. It's two that are joined together, and it's the largest one, certainly in height, and one of the largest ones in length. And you can see the Monarch of the Glen at the far wall. So whereas we started off in 2017 by displaying the Monarch of the Glen simply as a very fine example of mid-Victorian painting, by hanging it next to a painting of Niagara Falls by a very famous American landscape painter from that period, and by David Roberts, who's one of our top Scottish landscape painters of the early to mid-19th century. That's how we used to display it upstairs when we first acquired it. But now it's central to a display which is devoted to magnificent views of Scotland, of which this Monarch aside from the Monarch, is proving to be the most popular. And it's by an artist called Peter Graham, who was one of a number of Scottish artists that trained in Scotland and then went, following David Wilkie, to make a career in London. And Peter Graham was particularly successful producing pictures like that. He was a bit like the, the Damien Hirst of his day, where people were queuing up to have the next work by Peter Graham. He had a list of people. He was one of the artists that came up regularly every year to Scotland in the late summer, early autumn. He had a studio, I think, near Perth, and took lots of sketches, enjoyed fishing, it was a big thing, and then went back to London and painted paintings such as this in the studio. Now, from the early 19th century, artists' views of Scotland increasingly focused on remote, awe-inspiring locations. Infused with a deep sense of history, their paintings often captured the dramatic natural scenery of the Highlands, particularly the Highlands. They included scenic features like waterfalls, ruins, isolated lochs, and rivers in spate, a bit of an example you get here. And they also included majestic stags and grazing sheep. Now, it's difficult to underestimate or even to give a sense of how popular these paintings were at the time. So the original paintings, then engravings after the paintings, which were produced and reproduced well into the 20th century, when art moved on, apparently, when tastes went towards more modern scenes. But the demand for this type of view of Scotland really lasted a hugely long time, and still it's proving to be very popular today. Peter Graham's Wandering Shadows is at the top of our list of what we call prints on demand, where people can have a canvas or a poster or whatever, a print made of a painting in the collection. This is one of the ones that, this is the one that is the most popular since we've opened the gallery, which is really, I think, really interesting. So it's interesting that these paintings, such paintings as these, became popular at a time that Britain was becoming more urban and increasingly industrial. And as a result of paintings such as these and their reproductions, Scotland became widely known, in the words of Sir Walter Scott, the great writer, as the land of the mountain and the flood. So the display in which we put the Monarch of the Glen explores this artistic vision of Scotland, and a key part of the display is devoted to Sir Walter Scott, he works inspired by him, and the part of Scotland that he's most associated physically with, the borders, takes up a large part of the gallery as we're looking down towards the back, on the left-hand side. So Landseer was a great friend of Walter Scott. He's one of the many artists who made it his way to Abbotsford and courted Walter Scott. He was advised by another artist that the way to Walter Scott's heart was to paint his dogs, and that seems to have worked very well. But they had a good relationship as long as Scott continued to live. And it was Walter Scott who had so much to do with the development of a romantic idea of Scotland in the very early 19th century, and inspired many, many artists. And this display, as well as including the Monarch of the Glen, also includes this magnificent full-length, what we call tartan portrait of the Scottish laird, Colonel Alistair Ranaldson MacDonald of Glengarry, dressed in sporting gear, by Sir Henry Raeburn. And I've put a compilation of a few of the other paintings here that you might be interested in. So MacDonald of Glengarry, this was painted in about 1812, so it's very early 19th century, was quite a controversial figure. He is one of only 2 Gaelic speakers that's represented in the displays, and he was deeply attached to his native Gaelic culture, history, dress, and the people that were part from his estates. But he's also one of a number of landlords from this period who cleared his land of crofters to farm sheep. Why this painting is particularly interesting, I think, and why I included it in the displays, is because he is shown as a traditional Highland chieftain in sporting dress. And for a long time, we talked about him being in military dress, until it was pointed out by colleagues at the National Museum of Scotland that he was holding a sporting rifle, and that this is a sporting image, not a military image. And I'd be really interested to hear any views that you have on this. He was a great friend of Walter Scott, Glengarry. He gave Scott his dog Maida. There's a sculpture of Scott right in the centre of Edinburgh underneath the Scott Monument, which has this wonderful hound that was given to Scott by Glengarry. And Scott wrote of his friend, and I quote, just to give you a sense of how this all fits in. Strong, active and muscular, Scott wrote, he follows the chase of the deer for days and nights together, sleeping in his plaid, when darkness defeats him or overtakes him in the forest. And it's thought that Glengarry inspired a character in one of Scott's novels, Waverley, the character of the chieftain Fergus MacIver. In this display too, you'll find Callum, a Dandy Dinmont Terrier, a type of dog also named after a Scott character from a novel. And this has a lot to do with us. It's a very important little painting of a dog because from that painting, not least the Peter Graham, we managed to buy the Peter Graham because the person that gave us the painting also gave us a very substantial bequest of money on the understanding that that painting of his favourite dog would always hang in the gallery. So I'm just also including there the portrait of Scott by Raeburn, which is central to the display. And I think it's quite interesting. I talked at the beginning a little bit about the Monarch of the Glen being a monarch in attitude and pose. And I think by just juxtaposing those three portraits of Glengarry, of Scott, but also of the Monarch of the Glen, you get a better sense of what it was that Landseer did with that painting, that he did create a portrait of the stag in much the same way that he created portraits of important people from the period. And in the display, the Monarch of the Glen faces Glengarry, which I think, given that Glengarry was known for hunting stags, is an interesting juxtaposition. So this is how we show the Monarch of the Glen. It's more of a contextualizing approach. It seems to have worked. We've been doing a lot of visitor research in the galleries to get a sense of which ones of the new displays people are enjoying, what do they like. There is, retail is saying one thing. We've got, as I've said, a lot of images and prints and reproductions are being bought of works in the galleries, and the Monarch of the Glen and the Peter Graham Wandering Shadows are the two most popular retail works at the moment. But the visitor research more general is giving us the sense that people are really enjoying this display, even though some of the behind the romantic views, there's often quite a harsh reality, not least the clearance of the land. But the Romance and Reality display is consistently voted the most memorable when people leave the gallery. It's one that they remember. And I think that is largely to do with the fact that it has the Monarch of the Glen in it. So that's the end of my talk. I hope that's all right time-wise and gives us time for talking. And I'm ending there again with an image which shows you that the early Landseer of the scene in the Highlands with the Duchess Bedford is how it's displayed next to the Monarch of the Glen. Thanks very much.
Tricia, thank you very much for that enlightening talk. And it's good to see the picture displayed as prominently as it is. Are you pleased with it?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting. Given that the painting was designed to be hung originally in the refreshment rooms of the House of Lords, it would probably have been hung quite high so that it was under the table. So upstairs it was hung higher, probably at the height, more of the height that you would have seen it if you'd been in the House of Lords. But where it is now, and we found this with other paintings, there's always debate about how high things should be hung, but you can get up really close and see how beautifully it's painted, which is one of the great advantages. It's glazed. Many of our paintings are glazed now so that we don't have to put barriers in front of them. But I think we are pleased. The lighting's good. There are no windows in that part of the gallery, so you can completely control the lighting, and it seems to work well. So we're pleased. At the beginning, people were annoyed they couldn't find it, but it was also a little bit of a strategy to put it in the new galleries because we knew people would be looking for it. And then in so doing, they would also come and look at Scottish art.
Thank you very much. The question I had to begin with, was it ever hung in the House of Lords, or did he take umbrage and never let it be displayed there?
That's a good question. As far as I understand, it wasn't, because he did fall out. I think Landseer was quite a prickly character in lots of ways, and he fell out with quite a lot of people. But my understanding, it wasn't. But I don't know if it's been shown since. We had exhibited it twice, at least twice, since the 70s. So it's a painting that has been shown a lot in different places. So I don't know. That's a good question. That's something I should go and follow up, I think, if it ever was shown there.
When I was doing a little bit of research, when it was down at the National Gallery, we were putting a piece in our newsletter. I came across the practice in the 1850s of taking these pictures on tour around the provincial galleries in England. I think in Scotland and Ireland. Did it go over to Ireland? And it seemed to be part of a promotional way of looking at pictures in those days, that they became an event for the local town. Is that how you see it?
I think so. Certainly when we sent the painting recently, it was a big thing. Again, I think we were interested to see, particularly in Scotland, what people would think about it, because it is an image that's had many meanings. It's been used in comedies, it's been used in quite serious critical exposés of different aspects of land use, and for example. But it is interesting because it's so famous, probably because it's reproduced but also traveled around, people did see it. The response was really, really positive, really, really. And we did this huge research project where we asked people to fill in. It was very labor intensive. Everybody filled in little postcards and put their views, and then we analysed and digitized that all afterwards. And the volume of positivity was huge about them. So I'm sure it did travel then too.
Is it seen as a sporting picture nowadays, or as a portrait of a noble animal?
Portrait of a noble animal. I think if it had been, I mean, we had an exhibition of Landseer's work in about 2005, and that had a lot of the paintings of deer at different stages of the hunt and the chase. I mean, this one is the hunt in anticipation, or the stag waiting. I think a lot of people don't know it's a hunting picture, and that was one of the reasons why I was quite keen to make a reference to that with the other paintings around, because it sheds light on really the context in which this painting was produced. It was a sporting picture, I think.
Is it a sensitive issue in Scotland?
The exhibition was in 2005.
Are people happy to see it as a representation of Scotland? I think that's what I meant to ask.
Yes. I mean, that is very clear that when the painting first arrived in 2017, when we first acquired it and it was put up in the gallery, we couldn't believe how many people were having their photographs taken to it. I mean, it's something we're very familiar with now, that you commemorate a visit by having yourself photographed next to something. And within the galleries, that was the painting that people wanted to be photographed most next to. And I think that is because a large majority of the visitors to our gallery are tourists, lots of international tourists, but not just international tourists. And this is seen as representing Scotland. And that also came back when we did visitor research, that people see it. What does it mean to you was one of the questions we'd asked. And that this idea that in some way it represents Scotland. Interestingly, because it was painted in England, it probably is an English stag. There has been comments that the stag is quite overfed and probably from not a wild animal at all. But it does, people respond to it as being something that captures that essence of the Highlands.
Do you know where the background is, the location of the picture?
There's lots of discussions about that, and essentially no, but lots of people do believe they know. And I think probably given the way that these sorts of paintings were constructed, that Landseer would have taken many sketches of many different situations and then taken them back to his studio. And I think this is an amalgam, really. It doesn't have any distinguishing features, really. And I think that is deliberate so that it stands as an idea rather than a reality, unlike the portrait next to it, which is very much, I think it's Glen Feshy. It's very specific place.
Have you cleaned the painting since you acquired it?
No, we haven't. I don't think we have. It was glazed, and very heavy duty glazing was put on it, partly because it was traveling, but also we were a little bit nervous about it when we first bought it, about whether there might be a negative reaction in some parts of Scotland or not. But it was incredibly good condition. It has been, our conservators will always make sure that a work looks its best when they put it out, but this didn't have a big conservation treatment.
One of the questions, it obviously had its commercial value for the whisky company, and I presumed on other products in Scotland. Is it still of commercial value? And did you acquire the image rights when you
Yeah. Well, it's out of copyright. So the artist's copyright lasts for 80 years, I think it is, after an artist's death. So every year, and it's something I hadn't realised till this year, because I was talking to our copyright person. It's a bit like when the archives come out in Christmas, our copyright person has to go through and just see who's out of copyright, because that can be quite useful for us from a retail point of view. But this was out of copyright. But it is, it's massive. I didn't put them in the display, but the amount of product, we had cushions. There's always been product, ties made around this, key rings, fridge mags. It used to be fridge magnets, but this is one of the top images in our shop. As part of our new galleries, we built a very beautiful new shop, which is very important to our business case, as it were, keeping everything going. And the volume of Scottish imagery product made with our images from our Scottish galleries, the sales is huge, really, and this is our top one. It's taken over, if you know, the Skating Minister by Rayburn, which was one of our other famous images that gets used every time there's a political issue. It's usually the image of someone like Matt Hancock skating on thin ice. That had been for a long time our top retail image, but it is now the Monarch of the Glen, without doubt.
That's good to know. You're hanging the two Landseers next to each other. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other Landseers in the collection?
We do. We have a fabulous one called Rent Day in the Wilderness, which is big. It's beautiful, about 3 meters across. And that, actually, we're looking at bringing that out very soon, actually, because we have some works going away. Space is quite tight in the galleries, even with adding new galleries in. We don't have a lot of spare space. So quite often it's quite nice to have the opportunity, if something goes on loan, to try something out. But we do, that's one of our top historical Landseers. And we have works on paper and prints, but I'm trying to think if we have anything else. I think that's the Rent Day's been slightly bumped to the side because of the Monarch of the Glen.
I think when we were talking earlier in the rehearsal, you said you'd put on an exhibition that included other Landseer pictures. Mm-hmm. One of the questions here is, how do we find out about where the Landseer pictures are?
Well, there's a brilliant website called Art UK. If you're not familiar with it, do look it up, because that has images of all of the, started with paintings, and they've been adding works on paper and sculpture, but it has paintings in public collections. But over time, more and more collections have been adding to it. So if you look up Art UK and you put in the artist's work, that's one of the top ways we start. If we're starting to do research for an exhibition, it's always good to see what's in Britain, because it's cheaper to transport, but also then that's a really good, because it's artist specific. So that's probably one of the best ways to get to know where the Landseers are that are in. I mean, there are still a lot in private collections, but to see the ones that are publicly accessible, that's a really good place to start.
A couple of comments. The applauding the look of the galleries. They look spectacular. You must be pleased with them.
We were a bit nervous. I'll just say the red wall, if I can go back, most of the gallery is quite light because a large part of the gallery is under the ground. The back bit is sort of in the hill, and then as we go forward, you've got light over the gardens, if you know Princess Street Gardens. But it is this isn't a historical approach to have light walls. It's light walls because we wanted the space to seem big. But we were a bit nervous about how these historic pictures, particularly the big 19th century ones, how they would look on a plain background, because traditionally they would have been on a very rich coloured background. What does come over really well is the frames. For some reason, they sing out against this. But the red background that you can see here, we chose that because I don't know if you're familiar with the upstairs, there is a very red, the big Victorian tall galleries are red. And we wanted, if people were coming in through the new galleries, we wanted to prepare them a little bit for going upstairs. So that's the reason why the Landseer is on more of a traditional Victorian colour, which it suits very well. But it's also part of that process of getting ready for the historic galleries upstairs, which are very different in feel from the sort of contemporary ones downstairs.
Is this a permanent display, or is it a rotating display of your pictures?
This is permanent. We have in the new galleries, the original design was to have two largish galleries that change over. One that's got the more modern collection, because we go up to 1945, and we're showing some of the top works from our portrait gallery and from our gallery of modern art. So we wanted that end to change so that those pictures weren't fixed there, but also so it's the first gallery you come to, start with the modern and work backwards in time, so that new visitors were coming in to see something new. And then there was a large gallery, which is the second part of the gallery here, which we're looking down to beyond Glengarry or MacDonald of Glengarry, which is a literary theme where we have a lot of paintings, as a lot of Victorian paintings were, inspired by Walter Scott, stories from Walter Scott or from Dante or from Shakespeare. The original idea was that gallery would change, but that's proving to be very popular, and it's got a lot of our top paintings. The Monarch of the Glen gallery was always, it's more of a permanent one, but permanent, how long is that? 10, 20, 30 years, one never knows. But within that, paintings can occasionally go on loan. And one of the paintings we do get asked to borrow quite regularly is the Monarch of the Glen. And because it's a new gallery, we for the moment tended to resist that, particularly because it was away a lot before. But there's always a bit of change in the galleries. If a big exhibition comes up on Landseer, we would be likely to consider the request.
One of the questions from America, and I think it's linked to this, is the upcoming special exhibitions. What are you planning? I think it's planning a visit to Edinburgh, which you'll
All right. So this summer we have an artist called Catherine Opie, a contemporary photographer, in the Royal Scottish Academy, which is a building we share with the Royal Scottish Academy and also show summer exhibitions. We have an exhibition of Gwen John in our Gallery of Modern Art. That's likely to be very popular. And that's also going to be, that's just opening next week in Wales. The National Museum of Wales has got an amazing collection of drawings of Gwen John, and it's also going to America. It's going to Washington, and it's going to the Yale Centre for British Art at New Haven. So that will be stateside. We've got a fantastic exhibition of a photographer called, I'm going to forget, is it Alfred or Arthur Buckham? This is one of these daring do photographers who took photographs from an aeroplane. It was a flying ace, and also manipulated. That's our portrait gallery, which also has photography. That's on at the moment, and really, really good. Yeah, I think that's what we've got coming up. And our surrealist exhibition. We've got a very good collection of surrealist art. That's just gone out on show again. That travelled a little bit and it's all come back. So if you like surrealist art, we've been acquiring some very fine works by women surrealists in the last few years. And that's just gone back up, and it looks absolutely beautiful, really beautiful display.
I mentioned at the beginning that you were writing a book on World War II.
Mm.
the gallery. Is it possible to have a little preview of?
Yeah, well, so like the National Gallery in London, as soon as it became, a lot of planning was done during the 1938 crisis when when Chamberlain went off to Munich, and then the Czechoslovakian crisis. There were a lot of plans made then, and like the National Gallery in London, as soon as things were looking pretty certain that, and it's before September the 2nd or whenever the war was declared, the National Gallery stripped its walls of works and sent them off to safe places in the countryside. In Scotland, it wasn't, and in England, it wasn't initially to the Welsh slate mines, although that's the most famous destination. But in Scotland, it was to 6 country houses in the borders. And then the gallery was closed. But then, rather surprising, there was a big fear because everybody was scared of aerial bombing. And I think I showed you at the beginning, the National Gallery is a prime target. It's right in the centre of the city. It's in parks, and it's got a railway going right underneath it. So were you to be and we know, because we have pictures from the Luftwaffe that took pictures of the Firth of Forth and the Forth Road Bridge and Edinburgh. So it was thought to be a real target. So everything was cleared out, taken away to be protected. And then, unlike other places, a whole series of exhibitions happened in the gallery of contemporary art. So I'm looking a bit at the evacuation of the pictures, which is very interesting. And then also what happened in the gallery when the gallery was empty. So a lot of Allied forces, Polish, Czech, Yugoslavian painters were in Scotland at that time because of the fall of France. And it's very international, it's very interesting. And also a lot of women, I think more women exhibited in the National Gallery during the war than have ever been shown since. So that's another aspect that's quite interesting, I think. We're criticised a lot for not showing works by women, but we don't have a lot. We're trying to build up the collections as much as we can. But women artists were shown there in the past.
Didn't they play concerts at the National Gallery as well during the war? Was that?
Yes, and I can't work out. I think they were probably in some ways inspired by Myra Hess in London. So London had more of a bombing fear in reality. So they had concerts, and it were really popular lunchtime concerts, partly because the blackout, it was dangerous and difficult to move around in the dark. So a lot of things happened at lunchtime, and that was really, really popular. And there were talks and concerts and demonstrations of Yugoslavian dances. And some really interesting people were involved in programming talks and lectures, which it just seemed to have been very intellectually alive, and people were really interested. And the numbers of people that turned out to visit these exhibitions is huge. Again, we've just had an Andy Goldsworthy exhibition, and the numbers of daily attendance towards the end of the war, there's a French exhibition at that time. There was many people coming to see 19th century French art then as came to see Andy Goldsworthy during the summer here in the festival.
Well, thank you. There's just one last question. I'll get back to the Monarch. It was a question about the value that had been put on the picture and when it was put up for auction. Were there a lot of bidders? Were you fighting many others?
We didn't buy it at auction. In a way, we managed to, I don't know if we'd have got it if it gone to auction. We managed to prevent it going to auction by having it valued. In a way, Diageo was encouraged to remove it from the auction and give us a chance to buy it, a bit like an export stop process, really. But we knew there was interest in it, as you would expect to. It's one of the top paintings. It would look fabulous on the wall of any national gallery anywhere in the world, really. So we were quite keen that it didn't actually come to a crunch point of us bidding, because we don't always, our pockets are not as deep. And also when you're as a public institution going to auction, you always have a very finite, you have to be very clear what's your upper bid. And auctions don't work that way. Very often, if someone loves something, or you've got 2 people bidding in an auction room, it can go high. So the painting was removed from the auction, didn't go.
Thank you for that. having seen it when it was down at the National Gallery in Trafalgar Square, it is well worth seeing in person, isn't it? It's the detail in the picture. It doesn't always come across when you see it on a whiskey bottle or a
Get it back. The colours are
biscuit tin.
stupendous. When we first showed it in the gallery, maybe that one, yeah. The blue, I mean, it doesn't come necessarily, but I hadn't anticipated quite how colourful it is. I think it's because so many of the reproductions are not. They tend to be a bit brown or sludgy or heather-like, but it is really vibrant. It's a beautiful painting, really beautiful painting.
Thank you very much, Tricia, for your talk this afternoon and for answering all the questions that have come in. Thank you. It's much appreciated, your time and the effort of putting the talk together. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you.
For everybody, the next talk in the series will be on Thursday, 19th of February, when Neil Kennedy will talk to us about the equestrian artist Linwood Palmer. It's at the same time, 2 o'clock on Thursday, 19th of February. And I'd like to thank Sally Bills for putting on this programme. Her time in putting it together is much appreciated. If anybody has any ideas for future speakers or would like to volunteer to give a short talk, please contact Sally or me, and we'd be very happy to discuss the ideas. So thank you very much, Tricia. It's much appreciated. A very enjoyable look at an iconic painting and the background to it. And I hope everybody can get to Edinburgh to see it. It's well worth the effort.
Please do. Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Much appreciated. Bye-bye, everybody. See you on the 19th of February. Bye-bye.
Okay.